Hello, loves. If you don't know me, I'm Dawn Marie, and I'm here in my studio, the Briarwood Imagiporium, in tiny downtown Baker City in Oregon. And yeah, I do have the luxury and the joy of having a dedicated studio space. But just because I make my art and crafts and hang out in a space that's big and roomy and easy to organize, please don't think that you can't do this at home, because this studio, like this wall behind me, this was in my apartment before I gave up my apartment in exchange for having studio space. So choices we make. But yeah, you can do it too. So today we're doing inspiration cards. These are something that I started making years and years ago, and I've kind of always had this idea that if I could just create the perfect game of life, like I could chart things out and make things happen. And I actually do kind of do that. So these are part of that. And I think they look a lot like what some people tell me, oh, those are soul collage. I'm not exactly familiar with soul collage. I think I understand that that's it's a process. It might even be a copyrighted, trademarked something sort of name. Sorry, don't have all my words scripted out here. Yeah, I don't do scripts. They're not exactly soul collage. They are done intuitively, but you don't have to get deep about this. This is just like throwing pictures together that make you happy. And later when you draw the card, the meaning's going to become clear. So they're a kind of a personal tarot, depends on how French you are, how you want to pronounce that. They're a personal tarot. They're a way that I use to let what I understand to be God, divine mind. They're a way I open the channel for communication. I do use a tarot deck to do 3-card spreads sometimes, and oftentimes I'll use one of these as a clarifier if I'm not quite sure, what are we talking about here? I'm not getting the message. I'll flip one of these and that'll often clarify. I pull a card at least once a week and just kind of, what is my theme of the week. I have a vision board type of a thing that I do. It's more involved than your typical glue it down on poster board vision board, but it's called Garden of Dreams, and I'm working on making a separate deck to go with that. And so I thought I'll go ahead and film it, because I film what I'm doing, and so that this video doesn't get too long. Well, it's already going to get too long, sorry. But so it doesn't get any longer, I'm going to stop rambling here and start making. So I'll show you what you need, what would be nice to have, and then the making part is super easy. So you might want to pause the video once I've got the stuff out and run and grab your supplies so you can make along, or just watch it and then go make. So here we go. Okay, to get started on these, the bare basics of what you're going to need may possibly be your morning cup of coffee, preferably still warm. Yeah, mine's not. Oh well. Okay, so aside from that, you're going to need some paper and some cardstock. You will want some background paper, which may be solid color or just lightly patterned. so that it's not too intrusive with the images you want to put over the top, because you're going to be doing something like this. So in some cases, I've used, like this one is polka dotted. This one is pretty much a solid color. Somebody yell at me through the camera later to talk about reducing shine if you want to do that. I will set my stuff out and maybe I'll remember that. Okay, so you've got your front paper for the face of it, and then you want a backing paper. Now, back when I made my original set, cardstock pretty much just came in solid colors, and all the patterned papers were regular weight paper. This was a lot of scrapbooking paper, although some of these are gift wrap. And you can use gift wrap as your backing paper, either new rolls that you buy because you're a gift wrap magpie like me. I rarely remember to actually give the gifts, but I like the paper, but I use it for things. Or papers that you saved. I know that this came on a package from someone at some time, and I just think that's absolutely gorgeous. So gift wrap works great. Scrapbooking papers, any other patterned paper. You might have some pretty little origami papers and have given up on folding cranes. That works well too. It's best, I think, to have at least one layer of cardstock in there so you get a nice thickness to it. So you're going to need your paper. You're going to need your glue. I like to use Eileen's tacky glue. Yes, I do get some bubble and warp. That for me is part of the tactile nature of paper arts. I like it. You can use glue stick. I find glue stick lets go after anywhere from a few minutes to a few years. I am glue stick challenged though. I know other people who use glue stick all the time and never have a problem with it. So that's up to you. My tolerance for things falling apart is low, so I don't use it, but you can. So paper, glue, you want some scissors, at the very least pencil and ruler. And this is a glue spreading card. It looks like a gift card, but it's actually a glue spreader. And I like to keep a damp rag handy, and I do actually even have a water cup, which is probably overkill for this project, but I do have a damp, and it's terry cloth, so that it really wipes the glue off my fingers quick and easy. So I like to keep that at the ready. I keep it on a plate when I'm paying attention, so that I don't accidentally set paper on it and leach the water in and get things soggy that I don't want soggy. Now, a couple things you might want to have. You may want a small brush for spreading glue. I think that works wonders. You can use your fingertip, but this reduces the number of times you need the rag. If you have a paper cutter, it just makes cutting them quicker. Mine is getting old, and it's kind of warpy this way. It's getting old, it is old. And so it doesn't make the straightest, most perfect cuts. It does well enough, but yeah. Pencil and ruler and scissors is always just fine. You may want to, let's see here. If you notice on here, these edges were embellished using markers. These are Tombos. They have a brush end on it and then a regular end. So if you have markers, you might end up wanting them. Not necessary, but nice. I've got some paint pens here just in case I want. I've got some stamp pads on my newer set here. Like this one, it's faint, but the edges are inked. So if you like inked edges, you may want stamp pads. If you happen to have a corner punch, since I have one now, I'm using it here on my original deck. I've just drawn around the glue bottle and cut the corners. Similar enough size that if I decide to mix these two decks together, it'll be fine. It won't be terribly noticeable. And then right now, while I'm thinking about it, in the nice to have. If it bothers you to have shiny images, you will find all kinds of YouTube information on how you can mix cornstarch or baby powder, which is cornstarch, into Mod Podge or glue and coat it on, and that'll take the shine down. And yes, that does. But also keep in mind, glue of like the white glue variety, that reconstitutes. If you live in a humid area or you handle these when your fingertips are damp, you're going to feel tackiness there. If you stack your cards tight together, they may end up stuck together. And this goes for journal pages and everything else. So what you really want to be using is matte medium, and you'll find that with the acrylic paints in your art supply stores. It's with gel medium, there's matte medium, there's gel paste, whatever I'm trying to say, texture paste, things like that. They're all there. They're mix-ins for acrylic paint or to put over the top of. If you don't have an art supply store, we have a tiny section of art supplies in our copier store. So it's a little hard to get supplies here. But what I use, this says Ben Flat. This is Benjamin Moore exterior flat deep tone base. Like I buy the quart can of deep tone base at the paint store, and this is basically the same thing as matte medium. It is a little bit wetter, it's a little bit thinner, and so yes, there is some bubbling, but let me see. Let's see if I can show you. Can you see that? Where the words are here? How the words aren't shiny? Everything else is shiny, but you're not seeing any shine on the words. That's because I brushed this over the top. There are spray fixatives that come in a matte finish. So you're really just looking for matte finish. The thing about spray fixatives, aside from you're buying a can of aerosol, and I think it's kind of nice if our art does not impact the planet any more than necessary. The thing with spray fixatives is that they sometimes just flake right back off of shiny surfaces. So you can use it, but really this I think is your best bet. And this is good for all kinds of other things. When you're wanting to paint glazes for different things, but you don't want it shiny, like you want to mix some of your acrylic paint into a sheer wash of color for a journaling technique or something, I use this. When I'm doing like folk art style painting and I need to thin my color, I need my color more sheer, but I don't want it runnier, so I don't want to put water in, I use this. And I do keep a bottle of satin finish too. This is a honey jar, container, and yeah, because I'm Pooh Bear. Everything around here that needs a squirt bottle is in a honey container. This one just happens to not be bear-shaped. But there are some differences these days. Some of the acrylic paints, the latex house paints, are a little bit sticky even when dry. So I do recommend, let's see, Benjamin Moore has been fine. Ace Royal has been fine. Clark Kensington I've had problems with in paint job things where the paint just kind of turns into a sticky plastic film. So I'd stay away from that one. But if you have an Ace hardware store, which just about everybody does, even in tiny towns, you're probably not too far from an Ace, you can get Benjamin Moore or Ace Royal. So there we go. A whole lot more talking. Gosh, I'm never going to get to this. And then, of course, I skipped right over the one other necessary thing and went to the nice to haves. Back to the necessities. You're going to need some magazine images, little bits cut out of magazines. So, small things. And you may or may not want words. I do the images first and then go back and play around with the word idea. I do keep, let me scoot a few things back so I can reach the things I actually want at the moment. I keep a couple of cigar boxes going. And when I can't settle down and focus on anything else, but I don't want to just mindlessly scroll Facebook or watch more YouTube videos than my little brain can soak up, I like to just put on an audiobook and sit and snip images. And the other day I had a bit of a rough one teaching a class. I was just a little off kilter and I didn't connect as well as I would like to have. Little things didn't go perfectly, and by the time I got done, I was just in a bit of a mood. So I went to my local library, which is a great place to get magazines. Most libraries have a discard section or a Friends of the Library bookshop, and at ours, the magazines are actually free. What's there from one time to the next, you never know. But I stopped and came away with a handful of Better Homes and Gardens. And Better Homes and Gardens actually is a really good magazine for harvesting images, even if the topics themselves are not all that interesting to you. There's just a lot of good small imagery to use. And so I keep this box with the smaller bits and this with bigger things. And this just keeps them so that, you know, if you've already cut it out carefully, your delicate bits won't get smooshed up. And obviously nothing out of this box is going on these little cards. So there's that. And I have a handy stacking file tray right there in front of me, pointing. Right there in front of me, I've got a 7-tier file tray standing there, and so all of these kinds of things are within reach because I like to play with paper a lot. So I might use a few out of here because I did just cut these images out and didn't have them the other day. So I'll keep that kind of handy. I do have some already set up and ready to go. And let's see, I will set this aside, these things out of the way. Scoot some things over so I've got some elbow room. Okay, I may not have wanted to do that. So the first thing you're going to want to do is cut your cards. Now mine are just at a size I can handle. I have medium large hands, I think, for a woman. I mean, I don't have delicate hands. I don't have huge hands. And these are just at a size that I can shuffle just barely. I was tempted to make my next deck smaller so it's easier to handle, but honestly, this is about the size that the images seem to fit onto. So many of the images I choose would not have fit a slightly smaller card, and so I decided not to downsize. Downsizing is overrated. So what I've got here is, let's see, we are looking at 5.5 inches tall by 1, 2, 3, and I think it's supposed to be 3.5, and mine have edged out to 3 5/8 wide. So up to you what size you want to make them. And I've got some of these already cut, but I think these are all foreground papers, and I need one backing paper, and I know that's one I used on the back. Now, if I was using gift wrap, I would cut just all as my backing. I would cut cardstock for my fronts, make sure it's thicker cardstock. These are all pretty thin. if I was going to use the gift wrap, I would cut a bunch of these. I would lay my gift wrap out, possibly even tape the corners down so it doesn't want to do that. And off to the side, I would coat these in glue and put a whole series of them face down on the gift wrap and then cut them all out at once. Because this is thinner and a little trickier to work with, cutting the individual pieces of gift wrap and sticking them together can be frustrating. So if you've got really lightweight paper that's larger, glue the card to that and then cut it out. For what I'm doing today, now again, I could use like a full sheet here. I could stick a bunch down and then cut them out. I've intentionally done my decks with, make sure I'm not going to dump anything. Okay. I've intentionally done my decks with lots of different patterns on the back. This doesn't bother me. You might want to keep to one pattern on the back because you want it to be more secret what you're coming up with when you shuffle and turn. I don't look at my cards when I'm doing that. I just look away when I'm doing the final. I usually shuffle 3 times, I cut 3 times, and I just don't look when I'm doing the cutting, and then I just turn what's on top. So if it matters to you, if you're going to do all the same backs, yes, you could simply glue your face cards, and if you wanted all the same face cards, you can glue 2 pieces together. But one thing that happens when you're gluing, if you tried to glue 2 pieces together, just 2 big sheets, and then cut them out, you may end up with air pockets. Even if you're going to do the same color, one color on the back and one color on the face, I would still cut the face cards separately and glue each one down individually so that you can be sure you've got all the air bubbles smoothed out. Is it hypercritical? Probably not, but that's what I would do. But because I like to do random things, and I'm often doing these a few at a time here and there, I simply glue up 1 or 2 cards at a time. And the process for that is pretty basic. Let me grab a sheet of parchment paper. I tell you, if you can get a hold of, I've probably said this in other videos, but that one's pretty used. If you can get a hold of this kind of parchment paper, it's sandwich wrapping paper. One of the local restaurants donated it to the art center, and they asked me to please take it home because they don't have room to store everything. So, boy, these are handy because the sheets are already cut and they lay flat. I did recently see an ad. This is pretty exciting. Advertisements rarely excite me, but I did see an ad. YouTube did position that well for us paper crafters for a new parchment, like Reynolds or one of those, whoever makes the kitchen papers. They've now got one that when you pull it out, it takes the curl back out, like they've redesigned their box to remove the curl of the parchment paper. So if that's just one of those things that curling up parchment paper bugs you, either in the studio or in the kitchen when you're baking, look for it. It's a new thing. It exists. No plug to the company, just, we all like to know what works. So I'm going to cut myself a card back. And let's see, we were at 3 3/8, 3 5/8 rather, I think, yeah. Am I remembering right? We don't know. And yeah, I save those strips, I save everything. And I want 5 1/2. So 5. Staying on camera is always good. 1/2. Okay. So I'm not going to cut a whole bunch because you're either going to do it with a paper cutter, or this is what you use pencil and ruler for. And I am fairly certain I did not yet have this paper cutter nearly 30 years ago when I made this first set. And probably did all of it with pencil and ruler. So easy enough to do. So I've got that. I'm going to already forget whatever's on the front and glue something on. And most of mine I've done on light backgrounds. I'll make a dark background one. Don't know if I've got any cutouts that I want to put on a dark background, but we'll see. And then I've got my glue. Now, I did just set my glue off to the side, sitting up like this. That can make me sad because then I have to wait for it to come back down, although I did grab a fairly new bottle. This is why I usually keep my glue in a jar, so it's already ready to go. When I'm working, quite often I'll let it lay on its side, and that way I've got glue at the ready. So all I'm going to do is put a good amount of glue first. I'm going to get my sleeve out of the way. It's gotten cold here. I'm wearing a sweatshirt over, well, a sweatery sweatshirt, whatever, over a long sleeve t-shirt. Yeah. And the studio is perfectly warm, but for some reason I'm just not adapting to the cold quite as fast as it's coming in. I don't mind the cold, but just not ready for it. And then I'm taking my glue spreader and I'm spreading out to the edges. Now I'm not going to go over the edges quite yet. I will in a moment. It's just get it all the way out to the edges first because things tend to wiggle around and I don't want glue to get around to the front. Ah. Or all over the table. Whatever. I'll wipe that up in a moment. But okay, I'm just trying to be careful to really hold this down so it's not moving around. But the big thing is getting the glue out to the edges. And so I'm pretty generous with it at this point. And I'm being a little bit slower about this than I would prefer to be. So it's already starting to dry a little bit. So lifting that up. I'm just lining up one corner, and other, and up. And I will oftentimes find that they are not cut exactly, and I will trim them up after the fact. This is where gluing it together and then cutting it can have an advantage. And this is where having a damp rag at the ready has an advantage. Throw that up there so it's not getting glue anywhere else. And keeping that over to the side. Whoops, get that back. I'm not ready to throw that up there. Okay, so this is the side I spread the glue with. The other side is nice and dry, and that can be my squeegee. Now, when I come off the edge, I try to remember to just make sure that I don't have glue on it, because otherwise the next time I come across, it can be a problem. But that'll get everything nice and firm together. And then, yeah, see, I've got this little bit. Typically, best let things dry first. Let it dry first and then trim that little bit off. If you try to trim when your glue is fresh, you can end up with kind of raggedy cuts. And I will, let's see about moving this camera in just a hair, if I can do this. This reaching up. If ever I get reasonably good at YouTube videos, I will invest in a better camera with a remote control and things that I can do that. And I'll learn to edit and all those things. For now, this is what we got. Okay, so I'm going to set this a little ways out of the way while I decide on some images. And this one, you could right away start gluing things onto this, but If you're not going to glue right away, keep an old book around that's handy for sticking things in to dry, and tuck that aside. Okay, I've got to remember I'm working smaller here. I'm going to move a few things so I can remember where my edges are. Good. Hopefully I'll stay in frame. So when it comes to choosing images, let me grab these here. How many images go on a card? It just depends on what goes together. I don't sit down and plan, oh, I want to make a card about a thing. I just lay out a bunch of cards and start gluing things down that look good together. I don't worry about what the meaning might be. Oftentimes it's not what you think. Like this one, okay, this will probably just be something that comes up on a day when I'm feeling a little bit cruddy and trying to push myself. I would not be at all surprised to draw this, and I'm thinking that's telling me pajama day, but it might say something different. There was one I left on top in here and then promptly shuffled it in. Let's see if I can quickly find it, because this is a great example of things not meaning what you think. Oh yes. If I edit at all, this will be a spot I will just edit out a little bit. Oh, right there. This one. Now, doesn't that look romantic? A kiss going on in the background. You've got the Queen of Hearts. You've got a romantic Paris street scene. Yeah. That was the card I drew the day my divorce was final. Hopefully this isn't TMI, but yeah. He fell for the Queen of Hearts. She fell for the romance of things. It was a really, really bad idea. Not a good match, and I am slightly embarrassed to say, or saddened to say, or just older and wiser now, so I can say without too much chagrin, but I definitely constructed a fairy tale and set out to get my man. Don't do that. Especially if you've got enough mojo to pull somebody in. Be careful. So anyway, it was like, yeah, the one time that card has ever popped out of the deck was the day my divorce was final. So there you go. You might think you're making one thing and you're making something that's going to mean something completely different the day you draw it. So I've got a few that are mostly finished, yes. I've got some that are kind of in the works that I'm not sure what else goes on them, and that's common. I just glue things down and let those sit, and when I harvest new images, come back over them, or just a different day. Here I've got some that I pulled out imagery that I thought might go on. And these have been sitting out, not quite dry, and they've curled. So once I've glued the images on, I'm going to pop these back into the book and get them flattened again. And so here is the gluing down step. There's really not much to it. I haven't quite decided. I think I'll go with the blue one of the blue coffee pots there. Have I cut out a few? Yes, clearly there are iconic images that always catch my eye. So I'm kind of big on my coffee still, apparently. I go through whole years that I don't drink it, but right now I'm on a kick. So, and there doesn't have to be a rhyme or reason to why images go together. I mean, I kind of suspect this is about gathering with friends. Even though this is a cookie corgi, I do have some youngling friends that come into the studio for Open Studio who bring a corgi with them. we don't play games, but a backgammon board, some cards, and this. And those images together, they just visually, I like them. So I like that layout. This over here, these images mean something to me personally. Candle image probably means something to a lot of people. Crow and rabbit are important to me. They're totem images for me. And so I like that. And then oftentimes I don't have the words until later. In this case, I was playing around with words the other day and I liked this. I'm going to pull some of this paper off. And this is where it comes down to, you can fussy cut your images. You can rip your images out. Another place that I do get a lot of images are catalogs, especially the kind of fancy-ish catalogs. Subscribe to, support your local PBS station and get the Signals catalog. Lots of fun little gift products in there have shown up on my cards. I'm tempted to grab, but I'm not going to because we're going to not make this go very much longer. A lot of their gift images have shown up on my cards. They're just sort of iconic. And so for gluing down, figure out what order your things are going to go in. And sometimes you need things to overlap or you simply trim them. I think this one I'll just trim so I don't have to fuss with the overlapping. Sorry, Crow, you're going to lose that little bit of your wing that you've got sticking out there pointing at things. Or its back, if it's looking back over its back, maybe that's what it was doing. And for some reason I think Crow is just topping this candle. So rather odd configuration, but whatever. And so for gluing down images, this isn't rocket science, but I will share my techniques and I will get my hands on camera. Where am I at here? Where the scissors are. Okay, don't go below the scissors. Okay, so glue on the back. And this is where having a brush is nice. You can use the spreader if you want to. And then I do try to keep this off kind of to one side so that I'm not having to change parchment paper, because I am going to come off the edges because I want to make sure that I'm getting the glue spread all the way out. And I don't want to stick the next piece I'm working on into this glue that is now on the parchment paper. And I'm trying not to let this move. You can get the glue off the front if need be. But, okay. Quit that. So I'm going to stick that on about there. And I tend to find that no matter how much I plan, I always stick them on slightly different. So I've just resigned myself to not getting attached. Just don't get attached to them landing exactly where you think. Now, I'm using just my glue spreader, the dry side of my glue spreader, to do that. If you have a brayer, you can also use the brayer. It's not a big deal. I didn't have one for a very long time, so it's not, I can guarantee it's not necessary. Let's see, okay, back to, now where's this gonna go? And Crow's gonna stick underneath it. So Crow next. Find a spot over here that's dry. Glue this down. And of course, all these basic gluing techniques and these little collages, you can certainly use these in art journaling. These are the same, it's the same way I glue things into my visual journals. The same glue techniques I use for collage, just like making collage pictures. Very same techniques over and over. This is just kind of, I guess what I like about the cards is they're interactive. As much as I love books and I love doing visual journals and junk journals because they can be so interactive, but having the cards out in a bowl or a basket is fun because you can play with them, and if you're comfortable with having other people have access to them, that can be nice. Sorry, I just sidetracked myself. Yay, I made a mistake that I can show you how to deal with it. I did just there squish glue out from under the edge. If you are very quick, get it off while it's still wet and don't rub too hard. This is just a very lightly damp rag. You can just clean that glue right back off. You just want to do it quickly and lightly. Yeah, don't need quite so much glue at this point. But I was talking about other things instead of paying attention to what I was doing. Try not to stick that into the glue that's on the paper. So, paying attention to what I'm doing. Brain with body, Dawn Marie, brain with body. Yes, that is a mantra in my life. Some of us have wonky brain wiring, and we have to remind ourselves. Okay. And so there I have a card all glued up. I may want to embellish it more. I think I will do, I would quite often, I would let this dry and then embellish it. But since it's the one we're working on, I think I'll grab first a marker for some color, and this one may be, this is like one of my favorite colors, but it may be getting dry, I'm not sure. And with these brush markers on the originals, I just kind of rolled it on. Yeah, that one's pretty dry, it's not going to give me much. It's not giving me a lot of color there. I'll come back with some ink. You can kind of see it. With some of these others, you can see much more edge to it. And this was intentionally just random. If you like a really finished edge, certainly take your ruler. You could do a beautiful outline on every single card if that was more to your taste, to have a much more matching kind of a deck. I can see using a gold paint pen and doing some things. Just depends on the look you like. So I didn't get a lot out of this, but I'm going to double it up with the other way I like to do edges. And that is inking them. So in this case, I'm using green, and this is pigment-based ink. Pigment ink is the one that's waterproof. Am I saying that right? Let me double check. No, dye ink. This is dye-based ink. Dye-based ink is the one that's waterproof. Good gravy. I was like, I should mention that. Well, it would help if I mentioned the right thing. Dye-based ink is the one that if you are using it for something that you're going to spatter water on or do a watercolor wash over, it will not run.
pigment ink is the one that is water soluble. On these, it doesn't really matter. I didn't even need to bring that up, but I did. And then I'm gonna run actually right on the edges. So you can buy fancy little tools for dabbing and spreading your ink, or you can take, and I'll probably say this in every video I use it in, this is a champagne cork. This is a felt floor protector pad for the kind you put on the bottoms of chairs. I did use a hardware store type glue in between, like a, not a 2-part epoxy, but a Loctite or something like that, a dab of that, because just the adhesive that's on it wasn't enough to keep it in place, which we already know because they always fall off the bottom of our chair legs too. But anyway, that's what I'm using there. And you can do different things. Now I've got this really saturated because this is a brand new ink pad, and it kind of overdoes. And I didn't need to go dim, but I do that because I'm not going to learn apparently. So there, I've kind of got my edges darkened. I could do more if I wanted to. This feels done enough, but if you want to add even another layer of interest, to me these are just kind of, they're just kind of little jewels. They're fun to look at. I was talking earlier, before I spread glue everywhere and needed to pause and wipe that up, I was talking about leaving them out for other people to play with. These have sat on my coffee table for years, various places I've lived, and it was fun to see my friends come in, and sometimes they just like to look through them. Sometimes they like to draw a card. Here at the studio, people will occasionally draw a card. I've got one little gal that comes in most Saturdays. She works next door, and she'll come in most Saturdays and pull a card, and she never tells me what it is. She just looks at it and goes, gives me a hug and runs back out the door. She does it on her way to and from the garbage can. I think she's carrying out the trash. It's a cheese shop next door, wine and cheese. So I've got an acrylic paint pen, and I should be hearing it rattle, and I'm not, so we're hoping it's working. I like these from Thule. I know there are other brands that are popular. So I've got a little gold paint pen, and just to throw some fun embellishing on, I'll just do a little scrolly bit in the corner, which isn't going to show up an awful lot, but just a way you can add some interest, some layers, some zhuzh. And that, my friends, is really all there is to this. It's just a relaxing little project. You can set yourself up a bunch of background cards and then just have it in a basket or a box. These fit perfectly in a cigar box, where you can just put a stack of the cards, some images that you've got ready to go. And then when you're just kind of wanting to lay low and do a no-brainer kind of project, you can pull it out and work on it for a little bit, tuck it away. No need for big studio space. It's not a project that has to stay setting out, because it can just stack up neatly into a little space, tuck away, and be used whenever. I always get nervous when I do scroll work. It's like, oh no, it's looking horrible. And then once I do a little bit more, it's like it always comes out fine. Sometimes not exactly as I would prefer, but fine. And yeah, I switched over to black. The gold is there and it's nice, but I want a little bit more. I want a little bit of a little wrought iron going on. A few little dots here and there. Maybe a little off my usual. And again, this is a paint pen I'm playing with. I could use a permanent marker here. I like the way paint pen stays pretty well on the surface. Marker sometimes settles in, bleeds a bit. This is getting weirder. I liked it better before I did that, but it's all right. Put some balls in there. There. Maybe a leaf. Maybe I need some leaves. Okay, I'm going to call that done enough. No, I'm not. I'm going to go over here and doodle too. Just because I think it needs a little bit of black down here. And this is really just extra embellishment. You don't have to do the added on things. You can just glue things down. I just felt like doing that. So, since I do need to edit this and then get on to some sewing projects for the day, I think we'll call this done. Go make some magic. Enjoy your day. All right, well, was just watching the replay of that video I just filmed and realized I never talked about cutting the corners. So if you have a corner punch, of course, that will do wonders. If you do not have a corner punch, and I don't really want to do it on this card because I'm making this set slightly different, so I'll just do it. Pretend this is a glued up card. Take your glue bottle or any other round thing that's of the size you want and draw around it. You know, here I've got just a nice little circle template. It's worth buying one of these so that you don't have to run around your studio looking for containers in the size you want to draw around, because sometimes it's not a corner that you're clipping, you just need a circle. So it's handy to have a circle template. You can just draw it, cut around it. And I usually do this at the point where I've got my cards glued together but have not yet put the embellishments on. All right, now go back to making things.